second royal visitor, His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie, Emperor of Ethiopia, Rastafari, Lion of Judah, and King of Kings. Trinidad and Tobago is honored to receive this distinguished personage. Descendant of the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon of Jerusalem, Haile Selassie, the 225th successor to the Ethiopian throne. This historic figure, regal, aristocratic, and humane, has ruled his country for 34 years, bringing the Ethiopian nation its first written constitution in 3,000 years. Our government and people welcomed him humbly, but proudly. Religious ties and friendly links between our countries were renewed and forged with the visit of Emperor Haile Selassie and his distinguished party. Trinidad and Tobago salutes Ethiopia. First stop, Arima, and our African visitors, greeted by the mayor and the waiting crowds, had their first impression of Trinidad's indigenous cultural expression when the pulsating beat of the steel bands talked of our common heritage of drums. To the Lion of Judah, our drums declared their welcome across the country, which waited eagerly to pay homage. In Port of Spain at the Memorial Park, the Emperor, in a stately and sympathetic gesture, laid a wreath for the young men of our nation who died for the beliefs he himself has stood for on world platforms. For peace, for justice, for a family of nations. In these critical times, the words of this world figure of peace assume great significance. In his native tongue, Amharic, His Imperial Majesty speaks to our Parliament and nation.
የተከበራችሁ የፓርላማ አባሎች በዚህ ትላቅ ስብሰባ ላይ ተገኝተን የኢትዮጵያን ሕዝብ መልካም ምኞት እንገልጽላችሁ እጅግ ደስ ይለናል።
Distinguished members of Parliament, it gives great pleasure to appear before this distinguished assembly and to bring you the fraternal salutations of the Ethiopian people. The peoples of Ethiopia and Trinidad and Tobago are today joined in a massive and a continuous effort to create for themselves a new and a better way of life. They face many of the same problems. The hopes and aspirations which they share derive from the same essential beliefs in the nature and the destiny of man. It is thus inevitable too that there should exist between these two great peoples the strong and lasting ties of friendship and understanding. We all know, as representatives of the people, that this is a particularly critical period in the councils of the 20th century. Sectional and dividing factors often cause major obstacles to national development in their expanded sense, as narrow national and ideological interests may threaten even national unity and progress. No one today is so foolish to believe that any one nation constitutes a perfect monolith of faith and ideology, nor could anyone wish there should be such utter unity of thought and aspiration. The systems of government which have sought to impose uniformity of belief have survived briefly and then expired, blinded and weakened by excessive reliance upon the supposed infallibility. The only system of government which can survive is one which is prepared to tolerate dissentient criticism and which accepts this as useful and in any case inevitable aspects of all social and political relations. The tolerance of dissentient criticism within the government proceeds from a singular social phrase, that the government exists to serve the people generally. The representatives of peoples and nations can only come together with open and objective minds and willing hearts to engage in dialogue without rigid dogmas and slogans and without violence. Working this way achieves no instant utopia. It may, however, enable us to achieve together what it is possible to achieve, and to move forward steadily, if not always in great haste, with some degree of harmony and a mutual understanding. Domestically, we can build strong and happy and resourceful societies. Internationally, we can force the end of oppression of man by man and nation by nation. We can bring about peace, security, and a mutual trust which will open the way to the greater human achievement for which the needs of mankind now cry out. Distinguished members of Parliament, permit me to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude for the reception that was accorded me by the people of Trinidad and by the government and Tobago, which we are going to include in our visit. I hope will serve as an example for strengthening relations among nations that are dedicated to the same essential voice. Thank you.
After the Emperor's call for tolerance and unity, some of our outstanding leaders of the society and their wives were presented. The Prime Minister, Dr. Eric Williams. Dr. Patrick Solomon, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of External Affairs, and Mrs. Solomon. The Honorable Gerard Montano, Minister of Home Affairs. The Honorable Lionel Robinson, Minister of Agriculture. The Honorable Robert Wallace, Minister of Labor, and Mrs. Wallace. The Honorable Saeed Mohammed, Minister of Works. A momentous and historic occasion in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. At the Port of Spain Town Hall, the Emperor was hailed as friend as he met the councillors and leaders, and the people again gave him a stirring welcome. Our royal visitor viewed an exhibition of our agricultural and industrial products, the produce of our land proudly displayed to His Imperial Majesty and royal party. Old ties are affirmed as followers of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, 13 years old in Trinidad, witness an unforgettable moment in the history of their belief. And so to Tobago. The Emperor and his party were again warmly welcomed and met by the representative for Tobago, Mr. A.N.R. Robinson. In our nation, famed for its religious tolerances, our cosmopolitan people meet freely for their own worship. His Majesty graced with his august presence the biggest event in Tobago, the Mass conducted in that island's Ethiopian Orthodox Church. And again, ties with Ethiopia are reaffirmed.